Okay, we are going to look at laying out the fabric on this piece of denim. You've seen it already. It goes with that great coordinating home decorator fabric that we're going to use for the sides and the and the band and the inside shoulder support. In the meantime, we're going to cut out the denim, and I want you to see that this is a chunk. Often I'm working with a chunk, so I thought we'd actually have a little conversation about that. It's a piece of denim. It has one long section here that I have folded up just so you could see that it exists and that it's big enough to cut the front. I've positioned it here just so you can see that. And now I'm going to move those two things away, and then we're going to look at the way I have organize this fabric so we can cut it out. And you see here that we were lucky enough on this chunk to have the selvages, and so here we have both selvages intact, which makes it very easy to put the fabric on grain. And so I have combined the selvages in such a way that I also have a smooth fold here. So the fabric has been washed, pressed, it's ready to go, and we have folded it in half and lined up the side seams, so we are ready to cut. And we're going to cut those fronts from that long extension piece we have. So here I've placed the sleeve first. The sleeve is actually in some ways the hardest thing, and I've actually done some work already to figure out how I was going to cut this out. When I'm in the process of deciding, I use my weights and I just sort of move things around until I know I have it where I want it. And so I have positioned the sleeve here, and I know that it barely fits with the back over here. So I have pushed it all the way to the edge of the selvage. That's okay. I know this fits because the pattern has been tested and tried, so I don't have to worry. I still have my 5/8 inch seam if I need to let a little bit out, and that's just in the underarm. So I think we're in good shape there. And while I have it positioned here, I'm going to check about the grain line. And this is something, particularly on the sleeve. The sleeve is a funky shape, and I often don't get it exactly the way it should be. So when you have your selvage, you can measure from the edge of the selvage to the grain line, and this is 10 1/8 is what I'm seeing here. And then you just come further down and measure again, because that looked like it's on grain to me, but look, this is 9 3/4, so it's clearly not quite on grain. We need to shift this a little bit, and so I'm going to pull it a little bit more, then we'll re-measure up here. That's still 10 1/8. And then we're going to come down here and see if we're close. We're closer, but we're not quite there. A little bit more. Let's see if that gets us there. There we have it, 10 1/8. So you want this sleeve to be on grain, if at all possible. And so we did have to shift that grain line just a little bit. And your straight ruler and your selvage are your friends when you're doing this. Or I could have also measured from the fold line, but it's over here somewhere where I'm not going to worry about that. And I'm going to take my pins and stick a couple of them in here to anchor this now that I know that it's both on grain and it is where I want it to be, okay? So we're going to just put a few pins here. Now when you pin, you want to pin inside the seam line. That one I might need to actually shift in. Inside the cutting line, so that you're not going to hit the pins as you cut. I cut with scissors. I do like to pin also. I don't think that weights really hold things particularly steadily. You may have your own opinion on that, and I honor that, and whatever you think is best is what you should do as you use your own habits to decide what you're going to do. Now, we still have this nice little section over here, and we're going to hope that our back will fit here, and I think it will. And I'm going to position it here. And it lays on the fold, so you're usually pretty safe getting it there. And I know that the narrowest part of the back is right through here, and that is how it actually lays out with these. So I'm going to put a weight there. I'm going to put a weight down here. And we're going to line this up with the fold line so we don't have to measure and make sure that we're on grain. We just have to make sure we have enough length down there. And I'm going to just pull this up just a little because I can. And that will assure that I have plenty of length at the bottom. So here we're scheduled to cut that, and I'm actually going to pin this also. Again, I'm going to pin it enough places that it's nice and anchored when I take my scissors to cut. Okay, and you can see here that Elizabeth, I think this is for my friend, and you see she has a very distinct rounded back with a very long dart and a raised up neck edge. So we have to, of course it's there, and that grain line has been readjusted there to be straight after we made her very large round back adjustment. It's about 3/4 or 7/8 of an inch. All right, and that's all pinned. And so I'm going to do a little bit of cutting so you can see that generally I don't even move the fabric off the table. I'm going to cut here, and I'm going to cut, and I want you to remember always to cut those notches somehow, and I cut them out. That is my habit, and it works pretty well for me. I'm going to come down here just to the outside of my cutting line. I'm going to add that notch here. It's a little huge because I had her in a little bit bigger size, and then at the armholes we had to readjust them. I'm going to cut that notch there, and here we go down to the bottom. Okay, and when we have to also cut up here, if you are using a rotary cutter, again, you'll have to figure out a way to put those notches on, or figure out how to cut them with your rotary cutter. I am not a rotary cutter girl, but that is how that works. Okay, I'm going to take a minute and finish all this cutting, and then I'll come back and we'll look at how you mark the darts and dots so that you're ready to sew. So your front and back will be ready to sew. So we have I have cut everything out, and I am ready to make sure that it all gets marked as it needs to be marked. And I have two different marking tools here, both of which would work and are ones that I particularly like. One here is the this red tailor's pencil. This does not come off, but this fabric is thick, and you won't see the parts of the it won't show through either of these. And then this is a piece of tailor's chalk. It will rub off or iron off over time. And so we need to make sure we have everything we need, and we have our notches, and I've actually cut those on. If you did not cut them on, you might want to mark them with a chalk, and you could actually put a little mark right there on the underneath side if you wanted to make sure you have that marked for when you are doing your construction. All right. Now on the front, we have this friend has two darts. I'm going to turn it this way so it's easy for me to mark them. I'm going to mark them with the tailor's pencil. And the best way I've found to do this is to stick a pin in the point of the dart. And actually, we need to come down a little bit because this is the medium. So we're going to be closer to here. No, yes, right about here. 3 lines in, and then we're going to come and find the end point, which ends at that medium line, and it's right here. So I actually, because I cut with my right fabric out, I can roll back my fabric and place my mark on both sides. If you can see that, I hope. And I find that really works just fine for me. These are straight darts. They aren't shaped. So you can just roll that there, and then I'm going to pull up here and raise the fabric up so that I can see that pin, and I'm going to mark on either side of that pin the end point of the dart. Okay. Now I'm going to take that pin out. I'm going to put it over here on the end point of this dart. This dart has been altered. A little bit has been folded out. We looked at that alteration the other day. And so I will, the dart will be a little smaller than it normally would be, this second dart, but it will work just fine for her body. And now I have that point, that pin in the point, and I'm going to roll this back again, and then I'm going to mark the point on either side. Okay. Now you don't have to put a dot here because the side lines up to the bottom dart, and so that we know will be our marker for lining the side up to the sleeve side seam up to the bottom dart when we put it together. We're just making sure that we have all the rest of the marks we need, and then we can pull this off, take the pins off, and when after I mark and cut and make sure I have every piece of information I need on the fabric, I will actually form the darts here before I leave the cutting table. This is just, it's my habit. I think I started it back in the day when I used to use a disappearing marker. And if it was a hot day and I got called away and had to go or run carpool or whatever I was doing at the time, sometimes I would get back and the dart wouldn't be there anymore, and I would have to re-mark it. And so I will actually put my pins in before I finish and be ready to sew those darts. And that's our first step anyway, that and the stay stitching, which we're going to sew down the front of the front and around the back neck to keep things from stretching out. So we have another one we're going to press here, and we're going to fold and pin, and then that front is ready. We also have two darts that we will mark and put together in the back neck, and we have a dot that we need to place here on the back. So let's do that while we are thinking about it. And that dot is at the back where you had drawn a balance line on your mock-up. So you had this great big line right here that showed you where the sleeve side unit was going to come into the front back. But we don't have that anymore, do we? We are drawing lines on this particular jacket. It's a real jacket. So she's in the medium, kind of between the medium and the large. Here's the medium dot. Here's the large dot. So we're going to actually put that medium dot in, and I'm going to fold it back. You could have put a pin in if you want. I think I'm pretty close to doing that. Another way you can do it is to just put a little clip here at the line. I actually do that most of the time because I don't put clips in for the ends of my dart points. I mark them with chalk. So you have to find your own little method. And we'll do the darts up here exactly the same way. It's a little trickier up here because this is on the fold, so we can't open it out quite as easily. But I've put my point there with the pin, and I'm going to roll this back and mark that little top of the dart leg right there, and then I'm going to roll down to my pin, being careful about the fold. And I'm going to mark that dot there with the end. And then I too will fold these in and pin them before I actually leave the cutting table. And lastly, we'll look at the sleeve. And the sleeve has one very important mark that you need to make, and that is the dot at the top of the sleeve. So my habit when I cut is I actually put a tiny little notch there. Since I'm used to cutting out anyway, I cut a tiny notch at the top where those dots are. But if you had not done that, you would want to come down and find your dot And if you've raised your sleeve cap, as some of you will have had to mark a new dot. So I have raised this sleeve cap, and I'm using the extra large dot actually, and I'm going to mark it here on the fabric so that I know that that connects to the shoulder seam. That is the other important dot that you need to mark on this front, back, and sleeve sections of the jacket.